Nailing it. Holly's still trying to get signed in. I think I'm finally there. Almost. I'm in the home stretch. This is why you should get on.
Well, hello to everyone that's not actually a presenter. I see we have a Charles and a Jason and a Lauren on here that are also early birds.
Well, this is why you will hear that I recommend you start checking in early. Because you do dumb stuff like forget to, write down your password. And then you have to reset everything. Oh my God, am I finally going to get in? Are you kidding me?
Brian looks all dressed up and ready for the occasion. I also wore a fancy top.
I just wanted to make sure I had my
Oh, I love it. On brand right there. I see you're used to working remote because you're still clean cut, even though most of us have been quarantined for a week.
Yeah, on design meetings, I'll normally have my hat backwards, but when I'm meeting with my clients, I'll dress up a tiny bit. It just depends on who I'm meeting with. And I threw a nice shirt on for you guys. I'm still wearing my jeans.
We appreciate it.
And Ken, they're my skinny jeans.
Attaboy.
Jeans sounds like dressing up. I'm definitely wearing pajama pants.
Well, you'll see some people walk by my office without doors in a little while with pajamas on. They're all still sleeping.
He's business on top, party on the bottom. Hey, can you guys hear me on this mic? Okay, I've never really used these headphones. Okay.
Yep,
they work.
I feel like WebEx is sweating me this morning.
I'm going to play some jazz music while we're waiting.
Miles Davis?
Actually, no. I was going to play some Pharoah Sanders, but that is a good one. I'll add to the queue. I just pulled some music for the bio breaks. Figured that'd be a good time.
Intermission music.
Yeah. Little jazzy elevator music.
Hey, Al.
Mm-hmm.
The music is like fading in and out oddly.
Okay.
Thought I'd let you know that.
Thank you.
I think it's the noise cancellation stuff on the meeting, probably. Sounded really good though. I mean, all things considered.
Yeah, I thought it would be cute to have a little, intermittent music while everyone goes and does their things they need to do in between speakers.
Sure, it'd be nice if you could feed that into WebEx.
I wonder if I can. Let me see. Share content.
Why don't they have a Pandora feature or something?
That would be a really good idea.
I'll write them. I'm sure they're dying for my feedback.
Yeah, I'm sure they're not busy at all right now.
We'll be seeing a lot of updates to all of these screen sharing, web sharing, remote software items next year or so.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Well, I got to be a grasshopper the other day when we were talking to Brett, and Brett was in space and Martha was at the Aurora Borealis. Did I say that right?
Yeah, or that's what it was. I can't say it, so you said it.
Okay, perfect. That's okay. I can't say Crayola made of wax, those things that are different colors.
Crayons?
Uh-huh.
You can't say crayons?
Go ahead, taunt me. It's fine.
Mine is the Old South wash. That's got it bad.
That's not bad. That's not bad. It could be worse.
That is usually what I say. It's really difficult for me not to put that R in there. Hey, Mark.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. So we're just going to give it a couple more minutes just to see if we have a few more folks trickle in because it's not technically 9 yet.
Yeah.
Get started with our introductions.
I have been finding that, just going back to that last point, as you have less face-to-face interactions, the ability to construct some thoughts and gibberish that just comes out of my mouth sometimes, especially these morning meetings. It's like, wow, I really need to talk to some people, face to face. Quickly, how quickly you lose those skills.
Right.
My husband went down to our family room last night, and I was like, "Where are you going?" I'm like, "I need human interaction." He's an introvert, so I could disappear for a month, and I don't even know if he'd notice. So he'd be like, "That's cool. See ya." Yeah. He'd miss me, but he'd also be fine.
Sure, that goes for any of us. I'll miss you, but
I'm adjusting to
As
working
long as
at
he has
home.
an animal to hang out with, he's good.
Okay. So if everyone's cool with it, it's now 9. So I'm gonna get started with the introductions. Holly, if you can help me with these. And then from there, we'll go ahead and start with the first speakers.
Deal. I cannot get logged in right now. I'm having some technical difficulties, I think, but I know the story.
Okay, sweet. So I'm gonna start. So can everyone see the slides? Okay, perfect. Shows me something different. So I want to thank you everyone for coming out early this morning. I know it was last minute and I know it's early on a Saturday, but we did want to kind of still host something and try to be helpful during this time. So Brett Miller actually came up with a great idea for us to host a remote conference. Brett's been working remote for a very long time, so he's kind of an OG in the game. So we wanted to go ahead and honor that now that we know so many folks are working remote. But also it's good to know as well, just to know the nuances and different things that are out there and how we can be better as remote workers. So the WebEx chat and the Slack channel will be open and I will be moderating those. So if you have any questions, we'll try to do them at the end, but if we don't have time, definitely hit up those lines and we'll have an Ask Me Anything session towards the end and we will bring all those questions back up then. We do ask that everyone mutes during the sessions until the end to give the speakers time to get through their content. So I want to thank you to our sponsor, Worldwide Technology. They've been sponsoring all our virtual meetings thus far, and we're very grateful to have them. They were founded in 1990, and they become one of the biggest technology providers, not only in the area, but worldwide, hence the name at this point, and they are my employer, and I'm grateful that they're able to sponsor us in such a late notice. So, Holly and I are the current presidents, and so we are trying to come up with upcoming events. Unfortunately, right now we're pausing all in-person meetups. We did have a few scheduled coming up down the line, but we're just going to wait and see what happens with COVID-19. We'd rather be safe than sorry, and we do care about our fellow members. So yes, you can wear pajamas to all of our virtual meetups. Holly, do you have anything you want to add here?
Wash your hands, practice social distancing, get in all your socializing with your UX pals via the internet.
So during this time, we will keep trying to come up with different things that we can do. And again, this remote conference is just another way that we can try to provide assistance to our users. To our members. Sorry, I'm so used to being a UX speaker, I just said users.
You just said what?
I called our folks users.
Oh, yeah.
Which funny joke, my manager always tells me that only in UX and drug deals is it okay to call folks users.
UX humor.
Presenters today, we're blessed to have Brett Miller, who's an engineer at Spry. We have Martha Valenta, who works out 1904 Labs and a UX CX strategist. Holly Schroeder, our co-pres, who's a UX researcher for a fintech company. Nathan Lucy, who's a service designer out in Portland. Brian Schwartz, who is a senior architect, and he's been working remote for a very long time now and working with clients as well. So he brings his many years of experience. And I am here. I'm a UX designer again at Worldwide Technology, and I'll be your moderator today. So our first session, our speakers are Brian Schwartz, Brett Miller, and Ken Moire. We'll be talking about working remote and the work you need to do to be the same whether you're in the office or remote, but context matters, and they will speak more about that. So I will go ahead and I will pass the ball over.
And also just a reminder to everyone to please mute so we don't have crash bangs going in the background.
Hey, I can mute everyone if you're struggling to do that. Give me 1 second. I do a monitor, so I gotta stop sharing. There we go. So, Brian, can you remind me who's going first, and then I'll pass the ball to them.
Yeah, Al, I'm gonna go first. I'll put some slides up.
Perfect. So I'm gonna pass the presenter role over to you then.
Okay.
All right, you are now our presenter.
All right, thank you. Let me get this shared. There it is. All right, so I'm assuming that you all see this slide that says remote work, the basics.
We do.
Okay, great. So as Al said, my name is Brett Miller. I'm a solution designer, engineer, jack of all trades, kind of. And joining me for this one is Ken Moire, the co-founder from Spry Digital. Brian Schwartz is on the line. He's going to be talking more in the second session, but obviously, Brian, you're welcome to jump in on this one as well because you have some experience. So I'll introduce myself a little bit more and why I'm talking about this, and then I'll let Ken give his background a little bit. I've been a full-time remote worker for about 15 years now. When we moved back to St. Louis in the summer of 2005, I came here, as a remote worker. My team is all on the East Coast. I support clients all around the world. I spend all of my time basically online, interacting with people. Groups like STLX are my social outlet, right? I'm very much an introvert. I like working kind of on my own, but I do like getting out and hanging out with folks. And so I'm learning how to to use these tools for those types of things as well. And so what I hope to share during this is my experience from over the years for me. And then Ken, I'll let you tell your brief story of how you ended up in this situation.
Sure thing. Or is that my cue now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I thought you had a little more to add. Sorry. Good morning, everybody. Hope everyone's staying well. Yeah, so I'm a co-founder of Spry Digital. I'm also the creative officer that oversees our experience team. We have had a work from home policy in place for quite some time. So that means at any given point, probably half the people are working remotely. And I'd say, we could have this discussion, remote work, in a normal context, and we can have it in the context of kind of our new reality. Hopefully it's a shorter reality than we all think. But, so what we're doing is we're adjusting, as everybody else is, to what it means to have remote work in the office. I'd say that, given the makeup of our team, if you don't know about Spry Digital, we're a full service digital agency. So that includes designers, software engineers, project managers, business development people, some business analysts and whatnot. And, we'll go more into the details with it with Brett, I'm sure. But I'd say that, in our first week and a half, 2 weeks of, distancing, isolation, not isolation, that's probably too firm of a word, but we've just been kind of understanding and getting into a rhythm and a flow. And we're starting to see just now kind of how people are adjusting to it and making adjustments as necessary.
Thanks, Ken. And so I think Ken touched on a couple of things that that is kind of the theme of this whole thing and how we've structured this. And I've always loved this quote from Albert Einstein. In theory and practice are the same. In practice, they are not. I've seen it attributed to like Yogi Berra and other people as well, but I like the Einstein one because we all know that this is so true. We like to talk about theory and this is how you should do it. For the more visual thinkers who aren't so much, about the words, and since this is a group of designers who think in pictures, this I think gets it across pretty well. So for those of you on the phone who can't see the video, there's a picture on the slide on the left. It says theory. There's some dog food bowls in a nice row with puppies calmly and orderly eating out of just their bowl. On the right-hand side, there's a picture that says practice, and you can imagine what's happening with the puppies and the dog food bowls and the dog food going everywhere. That's kind of what we're going to talk about, or how we're going to look at it today. I think you've all seen over the last week or so all the blog posts, all the things on LinkedIn, all of the stories of how you do remote work, and this is what you should do, and this is how you should do it. And it's a bit overwhelming, to be honest, even for someone who's been doing this for a long time. And so what we want to do today is just help you to think about the things that you need to think about to make it work for you, because there is no one right answer. I think one of the key things to keep in mind is that the job that you have to do, the work that we do, remains the same, right? I mean, when I, as an employee working from home, or Ken as a manager, working from home with his team working from home, are still trying to achieve the same thing that you were before. And we're fortunate in that in our line of work that we're able to do this. Ken will touch on it, I think, a little bit, and he did mention it, that some jobs, even in the design field, in running a business, are more suited to working from home than others. And so you have to keep that in mind as you go through and set this up and think about how you're setting up and how you're doing the work. So I'm going to go through just a few of the key things that play into our lives, right? So one of the first things you think of when you think of just work in your daily life is your routine, right? And so when you look at the routine, when you work at the office, right, there's this whole list of things. And I could have made this an even longer list, right? Because all of those things that you do in your routine that you don't think about that have become unconscious. So there's one thing on here that the conversation just before this kicked off, made me realize that I forgot to put on the list. The question, between get up and commute, the get dressed part, right? I mean, that's kind of an important part when you go to work in the office, right? And depending on where you work and what your job is, some people you have to wear a coat and tie when they go to work. Some places, I know 1904 Labs, for example, doesn't have a dress code. They say it right there on their website, on their careers website. They don't have a dress code. But that is obviously something that you have to do before you go in. And so I wanted to put this up just to get you thinking about that and those things that you do. Some things are going to stay the same. Obviously, you wake up in the morning, you get breakfast if you eat breakfast. Kids to school. The situation is a little bit different now because kids aren't going to school. One of the big things about working in the office is the commute. That's the one thing I don't miss about working from home is the commute. Right. So you have all of these things. When we look at it, how does this change when you work from home? Now, we're not going to talk too much in this session about the actual work, the get to work, get back to work, because that's a later session. But what I wanted to address here and talk about is how your life can change when you work from home. And our situation now with the COVID-19 and the social distancing makes it a little bit different. For instance, I was talking with Brian about this the other day. The kids aren't going to school anymore, right? So what do you do instead of having to get the kids ready for school? And you don't have to commute. So what do you do instead of commute? Do you go for a run? Do you take the dogs for a walk? You sleep in an extra half hour because, you can. If you don't have kids or your kids are grown, you can sleep in a little bit and have a little bit more of that self-care. And so those are the things that you need to think about, I guess, when you're planning your working from home and your routine. And Ken, I don't know what you've seen in this regard.
Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot of the same tips, of course, which are valid. You should have a routine. You should get dressed for yourself. There's the appearances when you go onto a meeting. It's one thing when you're talking to your team. It's another thing when you're meeting with a client. We're all experienced people. So think about the experience of somebody who's looking at you in a meeting and seeing that there's a preparedness to present and be present in that meeting. But there's something else that happens when we probably take it for granted, the routine and what that routine provides each of us. A lot of us are remote workers. Some of us go to the office, but when you're going through a routine for the day, I think it's a sort of mental preparedness for the day. And you're putting the pieces in place of what you have to do to get to your work then, not physically, but get into the mind state of work. And so even when you're doing a lot of those things that are on the list, there's 10 or so items there, you're passively thinking, right? You are, when you're commuting, it's a time to do passive thinking. I mean, some of our best ideas maybe come when we're in the car and we have music playing, when we're, actually, I don't have kids, but we're getting the kids ready, or I'm walking the dog, and you're still thinking about the problems of the day and how you're going to go about parsing out the day. So I think it's a really important concept. You can't just roll out of bed and start working. Some of us maybe can, but I can't. So there needs to be a little bit of ramping up part of your day. And I think we just take for granted all the things that provides when you do go to a physical work office.
And I think that, the whole commute thing is a big one. Like I said, I don't have to commute. Theoretically, my commute is 20 feet from my bedroom to the spare bedroom we use as the office. But like Ken said, very rarely do I just wake up, walk out of the bedroom and come into the office and turn things on and start working, because you have to get going. We have, I mentioned the kids are grown, but we have dogs, right? So I have to, let the dogs out and maybe take them for a walk, or I don't do it now, but before the COVID-19, the dogs love riding in the back of the Jeep, so they'll hop in the Jeep and we'll go get a coffee or a Polar Pop or something, right? Just to get out and whether it's walking or riding in the Jeep, there's that little bit of a commute that doesn't involve Highway 40, right? Or Highway 44. But it is something to get your mind going. And what Ken said about the routine is very important, because whether we know it or not, we all work off of a routine. If you were able to listen into Dave Gray's talk about liminal thinking in the last STLX virtual call, he talks about the getting into your mental bubbles, right? And I don't remember if he mentioned it in that talk, but one of the things he talks about as part of liminal thinking, the idea of autopilot. A lot of us have on autopilot with the way we work, the way we go to work. And part of what he talks about in liminal thinking is, shutting off the autopilot, being more conscious of what you do. I mean, you can use mindful if you want to use that as a term. And I think this working from home, and especially in this environment, is an opportunity to turn off that autopilot and consciously think about what you want your routine to be, because you do have that option now. You have that choice.
Yeah, and I would say just personal observation is maybe the ones who are not used to that remote working environment, the ones who have not yet defined that process are probably the people who are going to struggle the most at the beginning with getting up to speed on that.
And I think in the next session, when we talk about staying connected and sharing, especially with your coworkers, I mean, there's some techniques to that. We'll dig into that part of the routine, the work routine, a little bit more, because that is very important. Even like I said, I work remote all the time. The rest of my team is mostly all in person at a single location on the East Coast, right? And so I have to basically, when I come in the morning, I shoot a message in the chat room, say, hey, good morning, everyone, just to let them know I'm there and all that. And we'll talk about that more in the next session. So I just threw this picture in there as a little bit of relief. For those of you on the phone, it's just a picture of my two dogs walking in front of me on a walk through the neighborhood. It is good to get out, even now, try to be outside, even if it's just, in your own yard, walking around the neighborhood, staying away from people, obviously. So one of the big things that always comes up, a big question of working remote, is workspace and gear. Where do you work, and what do you use to get the job done? Right. So for social distancing, remote work, might be work from home, or you go to a co-working space, right? So this particular screenshot is just a picture of my Surface Pro and a notebook I took when I was down at Filament downtown on one of their Filament Fridays, I think over the summer, right, where they have people come in and whatever. So when you're remote working at a co-working space, you just take your laptop and notebook. You can get some basic things done, what you need to get done. But if you're trying to get all of your work done, everything that you need, there's a lot more involved than just a laptop and your notebook. So again, I just put together this list, and it's obviously not all inclusive because everyone's job is a little bit different. But everyone needs a desk, right? Whether it's a sit or stand desk, you need a computer, you need a monitor or monitors. I think a lot of us are used to working with multiple monitors, whether it's a laptop connected to a monitor or two monitors. Even in the age of text and all these tools, we still use phones. Some of us, maybe I'm just old school still. I don't know. And then the internet, right? Web access for designers, sticky notes and whiteboards and markers, a space to spread out and do this type of thing. Food and drink, and last but definitely not least, other people, right? I mean, that is a part of your workspace, right? And so, again, just looking at this when you're working from home as a permanent situation, there's a couple of options. I mean, I know some people who do ad hoc remote work even from home, right? They'll set up, in the kitchen or just wherever they don't have a dedicated space. And I know, speaking from my own experience, it's been very helpful having a dedicated space. And I have the luxury of having a spare bedroom where I can set that up. I have a desk, um, and able to spread out. And I'll show a picture here in a second of my current setup, and you'll see um, how I've got that. Ken, I don't know what you think. Your thoughts on that um, in terms of that.
Yeah, and I agree with all that. I think having a dedicated place to work, again, something that we've all heard. I think, make it a place that you want to be in. Treat yourself well, have artwork, have plants, have signs of life, make it comfortable. But one of the things also is, besides the equipment, I think you should have a setup that reflects your most productive place. Whether it's at the office and you have that dual monitor setup, sometimes a triple monitor setup with some people. But your favorite mouse, I can't work on a trackpad at home. That's what I've had. And when you get into design tasks, it's like, oh, I really need to get to the office and pick that thing up. So just, kind of duplicate your setup, have a comfortable setup. The people, again, who are used to that have put a little more effort probably into that environment that they're there all day. I'd say an overlooked thing is ergonomics as well. Really pay attention to the ergonomics in your home environment. It's going to make you stay in your seat longer, getting your desk height right, getting your chairs right, making sure you're not slunched over, get a monitor stand if that's what you need. As we're kind of, working here and there, there's those rooster stands that kind of elevate your laptop. You don't want to be having a bad back. I mean, you can look at the bed. The bed is very tempting. There's a bed back here, but it's probably the worst place you can work. And, if you're going home and working half a day, or people are just, we have a work from home policy here and there. People may take a day off and, they're gonna plop down wherever they plop down, and that's fine. But on a day by day basis, you really want to think about the sustainability of that. And so, you're going to have a bad back if you lay in your bed after a while. You probably want to avoid any distractions. So try to work in a place and eliminate those distractions. You can't eliminate all distractions, of course. We're in this new reality. Kids are staying home. Routine is all broken. But you can do things like, you don't want to be staring at a pile of dirty laundry all day. That's probably not a good practice, or anything else that's just going to take you out of that moment, and the stuff that you're going to be thinking about.
And I think that's one of the things that we learned early on. My wife works from home as well, and with kids, this really applies. If you have kids, is helping the kids understand what the workspace is, right? That it's a place where mom and dad need to be separate during a certain time because they're going to work. When for me, my kids, growing up, all of their friends' parents all, worked somewhere else, right? And so, for us to be home all the time was a little bit different. And so we had to make sure that they understood that. Now, when they were in school, right, it wasn't really that big of a deal because they were gone during the day and they didn't really pay any attention to where we were anyway. But it is something that you'll have to, just think about. And it's, as Ken mentioned, it's good for you too to have a separate space that is a workspace, right? So that you can separate your work life from your home life. Because one of the things that becomes very easy to do when you're working remote, working from home, and especially if you do it all the time, is that you end up working more than you normally would. Some of that is just the commute time, right? You're not commuting anymore, so you're working, and you just keep going. But sometimes you will just get so wrapped up in what you're doing. There's no distractions, right? There's no one else in the office. If the kids are outside, playing, or the dogs are out, or you're in the house alone, it's easy to lose track of time. And I was talking to Brian, I think, about this with daylight savings time. I'm up here, I have a standing desk. I'm standing here working, doing things, reading, just into things. And Julie calls up, from downstairs and says, "Hey, are you coming down for dinner?" And it's 6 o'clock, right? Well, it's stayed light so late that I took my cues from that, and I wasn't paying attention. And so you have to be a little bit more conscious of, I guess, aware of your surroundings and again, your routine, right? Because you take so many things for granted when you work in an office. So many of these unconscious cues that lead you to different things. Those are just things that you'll have to pay attention to and kind of rethink. The gear. Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to insert there, we're speaking of these things, not obviously there's best practices, but there's also the consideration that some of these things are a luxury for some people, right? Not everybody has a spare office and a spare bedroom. And so the challenge then becomes, how do they carve that space? And it's not just the physical space, but it's like the place to get things done. It could be a routine, it could be a practice, it could be taking shifts, in dealing with family or situations like that. So I just want to be considerate and share with the crew that we do think about that as well. And not everyone can duplicate their setup at home, and just pick up equipment, take equipment home. Maybe as a company, pick something up for them that's just going to help them get over that hurdle, whatever that looks like. Everybody has different needs in that environment, but just being very considerate to the fact that it's easy to say, yeah, just make that your home office and isolate yourself for a while. It's definitely a challenge for some.
Yes, absolutely. And that's a good point too, when you talk about the gear, the computer and the monitors. A lot of people will have, a laptop, for example, that, a company laptop that they use at work, they take it home and maybe do a little bit at home. So now working from home, you have that. The question is with the monitors, right? One of the questions our company is, looking at is how do you, do you let employees take, company equipment home, like the monitors and all of that? How much, as Ken kind of alluded to, how much does the employee need to pick up on their own, right? How much, when you set up this office, what is the role of the company? And so to the employees listening in on this, if you work for a company that provides your gear at the office, talk to them about what bring it up if they haven't brought it up. What are the possibilities in terms of getting things that you can bring home, or if there's any sort of like a financial allowance for you to pick up a spare keyboard to take home, right? And especially in cases where if you may have to go to the office at some time, even when you're working from home, right, you still need to have that capability at the office.
Yeah, and I think to add to that, sorry.
Go ahead.
Something to add, Brett. Yeah, just to add to that, I think everybody gets different kinds of work done, maybe in different places, right? So depending on the kind of work that you're doing, obviously our software engineers have no problem going home and spending swaths of time just focusing on the problem and what they have to code. But there's lots of other things, especially on the creative side, where you are maybe bouncing around between drawing, illustrating, planning, writing. So, for example, I can't sit in a chair for too long. It's difficult. But when I have to write, for some reason, I've just always found that I can go to a coffee shop and put on headphones, but it's just stuff, things moving in the background. Well, one, there's caffeine, which always helps, but there's enough stuff moving around in the background. There's enough ambient noise where it just, for some reason, I can't write in the office. I need a situation like that, but you don't, with the quarantining, there's not that luxury anymore. So, we still got to move around. We still got to find the thing that works for us, and that takes a little bit some time too to figure out. So the physical space, yeah, but also figuring out the right space and place for the task at hand as well. Sorry, just wanted to add to that it's not always just about the physical space. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. And the I guess one more thing, just in terms of gear, although it's not, I guess, technically gear, but it is internet access, web access, right? I think it's easy to assume if you have, broadband internet access, we use Spectrum. So, whatever the bandwidth is that they give us is plenty, right? And I don't have kids at home, streaming Netflix in the basement and broadcasting on Twitch from their room on their Xbox and, taking up all of that bandwidth. And so that's just a consideration. I don't have any best practices there, just especially in the design, field when you're doing interviews, say using Zoom or WebEx, or, you're doing interactive whiteboarding sessions where, internet access is going to be your lifeline. It's just something to take into account. And if you have, DSL, if you have old school twisted pair DSL, it's probably not going to cut it. And just something else to think about. I don't know how many people still have that, but
Hey, Brett, can I chime in here? It's
sure.
Brian.
Yeah.
The new paradigm, right, of quarantine life is that I have really good internet at home, of course, because I've been working from home forever. And now that everybody else is working from home, it's not as good anymore. And it's
Right.
it's nothing about my quality of service here at home. It's about the total bandwidth for the area is suddenly declining. I'm on meetings like this on weekdays that have never had a problem before, and suddenly I'm getting notices that your network connection's too low to stream video.
Interesting.
It's starting to see things like that that are
Yeah, that's
going to be interesting.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see how the overall environment, I guess, of online work changes, or what new services come up, right? I think we all know that some of the best innovations come from periods of crisis, right? Whether it's at work, all right. I mean, when something goes wrong or something happens, you're almost forced to innovate. And again, this goes back to the whole question of the autopilot that I mentioned from liminal thinking. Is we even in our daily lives at work, we are on autopilot because this is just the way it's always been done. Even though we may innovate certain products or certain things within our work, very rarely do we rethink the work itself, how the work gets done, how we're structured. Right. And so I would leave that with you, that it's not just a challenge that we have here to face, it's an opportunity to make things different, to make things better. So the last couple of things. Go ahead.
No, Brian hinted at that paradigm. I think it's not only using the tools that we've had, but it's everybody using them now and figuring out how we're stress testing the systems around that. One of the things that I've really found is how we've pivoted with communication. And one of the, I guess you can say, positives that come out of this is communications can be more focused, more direct, because you have to really, your windows to communicate. You can't sit and ponder after a meeting and shoot the breeze for a while. So it forces you to think a little bit differently about the time that you do have to communicate with others and the message that you're conveying at that point. So it's very interesting how I think just in the very short time since quarantine, we have been adapting our thinking around that.
And so I'd mentioned that I would show what my setup is. This is how I have evolved to at my place at home. When I started, 15 years ago, I had just a regular, desk, kind of an old-fashioned bureau type desk and a chair, sitting down, had a laptop with just a laptop monitor, right? Because this was 15 years ago, and I was lucky that they let me just work from home because they were all on the East Coast and I was here in St. Louis. And so over time it's evolved, and you see I've got a company laptop here. I've got a laptop I use to access customer sites. I've got a couple of different monitors. My personal laptop, the Surface Pro. I still love pen and paper, so I've got that. The microphone. I think this is we didn't really touch on that, but the microphone is something that I've found, especially for something like this, or when you're having a meeting, it's good to have a quality microphone if you can. Most times, most times when we have conversations, I just, have my iPhone and, the earbuds. But for this, for example, it's nice to have something else. There's a printer over here on the side, it prints like 2 pages a year or something ridiculous like that. Ken mentioned ergonomics. I picked up this desk. It's a sit stand desk that I just picked up from IKEA. Right, it's got a crank on the left hand side so you can raise it and lower it. Most of the times I like to stand because I like to move around. You can see me, a lot of times on these conferences, I'll anyway be moving around more than I should. But it's nice to be able to sit down at times. And then I use this Kinesis keyboard. It's nice to have it split. It's just but again, this is something you may have at your office as well.
I'll second the Kinesis keyboard. If you're stuck at a desk all day, your shoulders hunched forward, Kinesis keyboards allow you to separate them and keep your shoulders back. As a guy who's had 2 shoulder surgeries, I'm a big fan.
I've not made that jump yet. They still bug me out, but yeah,
Well,
I'm not sitting in place coding for too long a period either.
Well, and I had looked at one time at yeah, I don't sit that much, like I said, anymore, but back when I was sitting a lot and doing this, I'd actually looked at the split keyboards where you could put them like on the armrest of your chair, right? So you could sit in your chair and you have, the left side on the left and have them split because and that would be an interesting side conversation, I think, with that because I learned how to type on, typewriters, old school. I mean, the whole, home keys and all of that. And I don't know if they still teach keyboarding or typing that way. How we, anyway, that's a radical tangent that we went off on there. So one of the last bullet on the slide talking about space and gear was other people. And Ken has touched on this a little bit. And we'll talk about how to stay connected with other people, whether through formal meetings or just, morning chats, just to stay connected. But it's very important to think about yourself in this, right? And again, this goes back to taking the time to actually think about what you need and what works best for you. Because when you go to the office, a lot of things are decided for you, right? And you make the choice to engage in those behaviors in that environment because that's where you work, that's the job, that's the employment. And there are certain things that you'll still have to do specific to your company. I mean, how you do, say, a daily stand up or that type of thing, but you have, when you're working from home, a lot more, again, opportunity to think about yourself, to think about what works best for yourself. And I would say that you have the responsibility to think about yourself, to take into account more, what it is that you need, and what helps you do your best work. And I think this is one of those things too that over the long term, and depending on how long this goes, I think is going to have a longer term effect beyond, quarantine induced remote work. I'm the idealist in me, wants to believe that, once the quarantine and social distancing and all this is over, that everyone will see the light and that every job that can be a remote job will be a remote job. Right. I mean, that it just makes sense to me, having been a remote worker and being able to do my job, sitting at a picnic table at Creve Coeur Lake. I don't understand, why anyone would go back to an office, but that's just my experience, right? And I think we will see that more and more with a lot of positions, but I'm under no illusion that we won't have offices in the future and that there still isn't a need to have a place where people come together to get work done. And I think though that as we go through this, as employees think about what works and figure out what works, and managers and leaders see what those employees come up with and how they get things done, and also understand what works for them in terms of how do I lead, how do I keep track of deliverables, right? Because there's the whole, I mean, aside from the work that gets done, there's the whole management aspect of how do you keep track of everything? How do you stay engaged as a leader with each person, right? Because you can't, I started my career as an Army officer, right? And my job during the day was, to walk around the motor pool and go out to training sites and talk to people and see how they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And a lot of managers in an office do that now too. It's not about looking over someone's shoulder to make sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. It's about engaging with them and making sure that you as a leader are meeting their needs as an employee to get the work done, right? And so there's that challenge. I think that obviously that'll all we'll figure that out as we go, especially as this goes on a long time.
Yeah, so we've had very few full-time remote workers. They have over time figured out kind of what their needs are, and maybe they decide to come into the office once a week, or work partially from home and partially from another location. And each person's going to figure that out for themselves. The new paradigm, what people are really figuring out, what you have to do as a leader is, when we had limited work from home, our normal policy is work from home 1 or 2 days a week. And, it's kind of business as usual. The goals and the tasks that you have laid out and what needs to get done is like you expect that not to change. And you expect somebody who's working from home to still be knocking out in the same pace and fashion. But really, this full-time quarantine situation warrants what you said, Brett, which is like just reaching out and making sure they're okay and that they have what they need and doing more touch points. Because, now it's the family and home and office situation is all merged. And so we're really having to determine how people are dealing with it, setting new expectations of productivity. Now, you are right. What we are finding is people are more inclined to work into the evening and take care of themselves during the day. So perhaps we are getting longer hours, and there's a lot of research to kind of support that. But obviously, that's not the goal. We want the best work and the healthiest people. But that communication can't be overlooked. We're still social creatures. Even the ones that are more introverts still require that communication throughout the day. So we have to make time for people. The channels that we have in Slack that are kind of the sillier nonsense channels or music channels, they've just become more active during this period because we're craving that connection that we get in other ways throughout the day. One thing we've always done as a company is even the remote workers, when we're having a celebration or when we're having like an ice cream social or something like that, we actually will mail and send people ice cream through the mail if they're remote workers, just to include them in it and get on a hangout. The virtual happy hours that I'm seeing all over the place, that stuff's really fantastic. And so one of the keys, whether it's the quarantine or not, just remote workers, make sure you're keeping them in the loop and make sure you're celebrating together and enjoying successes while still driving to the goals of the business, of course.
Yeah. And I think you kind of touched there on what I'm seeing as a difference between, like I said, me being a remote worker, full-time remote worker, the rest of my team is on site. And you have some people who are remote and others on site. It's the difference between some people being remote and everyone being remote.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I think that's where the challenge is going to come up and where we'll see the difference, right? Because it's the challenges I have as the lone remote worker on a team of people who are all co-located and talking to each other during the day and coming up with things that I'm not privy to because it's ephemeral things that they just talk about as they go. Now that doesn't exist. It's possible that they may still have those private channels or whatever, but the opportunity is to make it a little bit more visible and observable. So we're at 9:45 right now. We had planned to end this at about 9:50 so that we can take just a short break. Everyone, understanding we're virtual, you can take a break whenever you want to. Still want to just have a little bit of time to reset between those. I don't see any questions in the WebEx chat. Al, I don't know if there's anything in the Slack.
I did want to ask if anyone had questions. I've muted everyone, so you'll have to unmute yourself if you want to ask the question.
I don't have a question. I have a statement. If your company isn't, Glasses on. Um, I'm really lucky. Brett mentioned 1904. We're getting an extra stipend to purchase things that we might need to build out our home office. And I'm really glad that my company is being so forward thinking like that. But I guess I'm just here to throw it out, I guess, towards Ken. Um, and also to everybody else that's suddenly remote. So Ken as a manager, owner of a business, and then other people that might be worker bees of a business, I think it's worthwhile to ask if you can get a stipend. And I'd like Ken to respond and say what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, thanks, Martha. That's a really great point. I'm glad to hear that 1904 is putting that forward. Again, it's helping people get over any hurdles that they're having. And let's face it, I mean, whatever stipend we're talking about from a home office equipment, I mean, when you look at it, the cost and the expense of that is negligible, right? And spending $1,000 here and there on something to get the most out of people, get them satisfied, keep them happy is not too much to ask for or to spend. So we've always had a stipend in place in general, personal spending stipend, because we are a bring your own device to work company. So we kind of expect people to have their own setup anyway. But I think it's a really good time for the other employees involved in this chat to definitely speak up for yourself and let people know what you need. I think there's sometimes people just like work with what they got, and that's it's been viewed as kind of an admirable thing that I'm just working under the circumstances. But we really, as a manager, I really want to know what people need who won't speak up about that stuff. I think it's really important, if it's going to make a difference of this or this, that you're letting me know that, even though you may not be naturally inclined to speak up for yourself that way.
We are almost at time, so I'm going to go ahead and close it down. I want to thank you, everyone. So we will keep this open, and we're going to give everyone about a 10-minute break. So this same line will be open. So if you need to log out and come back, we'll still be here. And I hope to see you all for the next session. The next session will be about working remote as a team, and we'll have Brian Schwartz and Martha Valenta as our speakers. And I will share a little blurb about that for our bio break. Okay, everyone, I'll see you in about 10 minutes. Thank you, Ken, and thank you, Brett. You did such an amazing job.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you, everyone.
And I let Brett know when he mentioned to me a couple days ago about the pivot that I do have other family obligations. I would love to stick around and listen to Brian and Martha. They always have awesome information. But yeah, duty calls, and we kind of prepared this earlier. But thanks so much for including me. I think it's a great conversation, whether or not it was a pivot or not. I think it's great to kind of continue this conversation. It's going to be probably a new reality that we, work under for a while, or more and more of the workforce going remote. So it's great conversations to have. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Brett. And thank you, Ken, for bringing a perspective. It's always needed.
Right on. Everyone have a great weekend and be safe, okay?
All right. Thank you, everyone. Okay. And again, we're just going to pause right now for a bio break. So if you need a restroom, oatmeal, any of that, feel free.